Today we're going to be showing you how to do the Belgium Block style curve. These are the items that you need. First, you start with the Belgium Block mat set. You actually have 3 larger mats for your larger straightaway runs. You got 2 half mats for tighter radiuses. And then you have a touch-up mat for doing 90-degree corners or anything you can't get with these mats. You also need 2 drywall knives, a rubber mallet, a simple yard blower, some mineral spirits, 2 different colors of release, and some seal. We just ran out the 6x4 undercarriage. Now I'm just going to trowel out the major imperfections so we can start the Belgium Block process. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add our release powders. This is what's going to give the stone their colors. If I want a darker stone, I'm going to cast our darker powder, in this case is charcoal, on first. I'm going to do approximately 80 to 90% of the surface in this charcoal, and then I'll highlight it with my secondary colors just to bring some flavor into the stone. Now, there's a couple different ways to broadcast. I'm actually using a wash mitt. As you can see, I'm just dipping in the powder and casting it on. You can also just take your hand and fluff up some and cast it on, but sometimes it gets clumpy, and that's why I like to use the wash mat. Okay, so now it's time to stamp the curve, and that's where we're going to use these Belgium Block mats. As I told you earlier, there's 2 different sizes. These are intended for tight radiuses. But you can also use them in the straightaways too if you want to just switch up your patterns. Like for instance, I'm going to use 3 large and then 2 small in that sequence and maintain that through this whole process. But I could leave these out completely and just do all large, or I could do all small, or I could do big, small, big, small, big. It's really up to you. It's what what you decide that you like best. So how these mats work? They have a texture on the bottom side. The release powder that we casted on is going to keep the mat from sticking to the curve. So all we do is we spread it out, place it onto the curve, and then we're going to knock it down into the mix, into this curve. Top first, and then we beat in the sides, bring the sides in. Then we're going to take our next mat and place it about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch away from this mat, and that's going to be your grout line. And again, you just knock it in and just repeat the process. Okay, so now I've put all my mats on. Now I've got to take them off, and now I'm going to just start leapfrogging the mats as we go. This area you want to be extremely careful, because if I just pick this mat straight up, I'm going to scratch the surface and remove my release powders. So what I want to do is grab a hold of the sides, flex it outward, and pull it straight up. And then I can just place this one in front of my next mat. Okay, now we're coming into a radius. When you come into a radius that's too tight for these large mats, what you'll see is it just won't fit. Your mat will sit on there kind of crooked. And that's where you could just use your smaller mats to get you through that radius. You should probably look at that in the start so it doesn't make your pattern look funny. This radius is going to be okay so I can maintain this pattern, so that's what I'm going to do. This is the touch-up mat. This is to be used like on the ends. I'm going to show you right here. Also, if you're doing corners, like I said earlier, anywhere that you can't use one of these mats. So basically this end right here, I'm just going to take this mat and just kind of just roll the texture into it. And that's how your curb would start off. We've got release powders all over the curb here. We actually got too many release powders because we broadcast them on. And I'm actually going to cut this area between where the stamps were to expose it as a mortar joint. And I want my mortar joints to be the Portland color, the regular concrete color. So I don't want any powders in these mortar joints. That's why I have this yard blower. I'm going to blow off any excess powder that I can before I expose the mortar joint. So that's what I'm going to do right now. What we're going to do is create our mortar joint. Simply in between the mats in this area, I'm just going to use 2 drywall knives and actually wedge that material out, exposing the concrete underneath. Once that's done, you can just drag your finger along it just to smooth it out. And that's your mortar joint. Can't get it. So I've got a blemish here where I dropped some of the concrete on it, and when I scraped it off with a knife, I actually scraped some of the surface off. All I have to do is actually just take some release powders, just put my fingers in the release powder, and just tap it in, and you'll never even see it. This step is removing the rest of the unwanted release powders. Even though we've blown it off, it's still got a high concentration of release powder, so if you try and seal it at this point, it would take a large amount of sealer to get all the release powders to react. So what I'm going to use is just mineral spirits. I spray down my curb with mineral spirits, get all my release powders to react with the mineral spirits, and then I just let the mineral spirits evaporate. It'll go back to a chalky look like this, and that's when I know I'm ready for sealing. Belgium Block, being that it's a stone look, actually can go anywhere. You're not worried about it matching certain things because it's just such a natural look. Makes it perfect for patios and landscape, long driveways. It's just a great type of curb to do. Very user-friendly. It does take about 30% longer than a typical angle curb does, but most contractors are getting at least 50% more than what they're getting for the regular styles. Now, the mats are proprietary to TYGAR, so if you have any more questions on them, please feel free to give us a call. This is the 6x4. We also do have the 4x7, which is 4 wide, 7 high, and soon to come will be an 8x5 Belgian block that we're really excited about that one.